What if a single act of kindness offered to the most difficult person you've ever met could change your entire life? This isn't a fairy tale. This is what happened to Maya, a 24-year-old waitress drowning in debt when she chose compassion over contempt. She thought he was just a rude, destitute old man who ruined her Tuesday shift. She had no idea he was Alexander Sterling, a reclusive billionaire testing the world's humanity. Her decision to treat him with dignity didn't just earn her a thank you. It led to a first-class flight to Paris, an offer that would save her family, and a confrontation that would expose the darkness of human greed. Stay with us to hear the full story of how one woman's refusal to be cruel made her dreams a reality. The Tuesday lunch rush at the corner table bistro was a special kind of hell. It was the nexus of impatient business people on a 1-hour leash and tourists who couldn't decide between the clam chowder and the lobster roll. For Maya Reyes, it was the 10th circle, a whirlwind of beeping order tickets, demanding customers, and the constant nagging ache in her feet that had become a permanent part of her existence. At 24, Maya's life was a carefully constructed house of cards, perpetually on the verge of collapse. By day, she was a promising, if perpetually exhausted art student at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design. Her charcoal-stained fingers, a testament to a passion that felt increasingly like a luxury. By night, and on every available weekend and holiday, she wore the bistro's stiff black apron. The job paid for her tiny apartment, her art supplies, and most critically, the mounting medical bills for her mother, whose battle with a relentless respiratory illness was a constant low-humming anxiety in the back of Maya's mind. Her dream, the one she clutched to her chest in the quiet moments before sleep, was Paris. Not the tourist trap Eiffel Tower keychain Paris, but the artist's Paris. The Paris of Degas, Monet, and Rodin. She yearned to stand in the Musée d'Orsay, to see the brush strokes with her own eyes, to feel the same light that had inspired the masters. It was a dream so distant, so impossibly expensive, it felt more like a fantasy. Her current reality was counting out her tip money for bus fare. Maya Table 7 is getting antsy. "They need more bread," called out Mr. Henderson, the manager, his voice a familiar cocktail of stress and caffeine. On it, she replied, balancing 3 plates on her arm. Her section was a minefield. Table 4 had sent their steaks back twice. Table 9 had a toddler methodically dropping silverware onto the floor. And then there was Chloe, her co-worker, who was currently leaning against the service station, scrolling through her phone, while her assigned tables stared longingly at the water pitchers. Chloe operated on a principle of selective effort. She could spot a big spender from 50 yards and lavish them with attention, while treating anyone she deemed not worth her time with a glacial indifference. "You've got a new one in your section," Chloe said, without looking up, a smirk playing on her lips. "Good luck with that one. Looks like he crawled out from under a bridge." Maya sighed and glanced towards the corner booth, the one usually reserved for couples on first dates. A man sat there hunched over, wearing a frayed, oversized tweed coat that seemed entirely out of place for the mild June weather. His hair was a disheveled shock of grey, and his face, etched with deep lines, was set in a permanent scowl. He looked lost and angry. For the next hour, Maya understood what Chloe meant. The man was a tempest of complaints. The water was too cold. The menu was confusing. He tapped his fork impatiently on the table, the sharp tink, 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 grating on Maya's already frayed nerves. When she took his order, a simple bowl of soup and a coffee, he spoke in a low, gravelly mumble, forcing her to lean in close, and then accused her of hovering. "And make sure the soup is hot," he rasped as she turned to leave. "Not lukewarm, not tepid. Hot. Most places can't manage it." Of course, Amaya said, her customer service smile feeling like a lead weight on her face. Back in the kitchen, Chloe snickered. "Told you. He's probably going to pay in pennies. You should have let me take him. I know how to get rid of his type fast." Maya ignored her. She picked up the order herself, ensuring the soup was steaming. She delivered it to the table, placing it down gently. He dipped a spoon in, brought it to his lips, and then slammed the spoon down on the table, sloshing hot broth onto the pristine white tablecloth. "What did I say?" He snarled, his voice rising just enough to turn heads. "I said hot. This is barely warm." Is it so difficult to follow a simple instruction? Maya's jaw tightened. Every fiber of her being screamed. She wanted to tell him that she'd been on her feet for 6 hours, that her mother was sick, that his soup was the least of her problems. She wanted to point out that he was the one who had let it sit while he complained about the coffee. But then she looked at him. Really looked at him. Beneath the anger, she saw a profound, cavernous sadness in his eyes. He wasn't just a rude man. He was a miserable one. Her frustration softened, replaced by an unwelcome pang of empathy. "You are absolutely right, sir," she said, her voice calm and steady. "I am so sorry. Let me get you a fresh bowl on the house. I'll bring it out myself and we can test the temperature together." His scowl faltered for a fraction of a second, a flicker of surprise in his weary eyes before it snapped back into place. He just grunted and waved a dismissive hand. Maya returned with a new bowl of soup so hot the steam rose in a thick cloud. She waited as he tested it. He didn't say it was good, but he didn't complain either. He ate in silence, his hunched posture never changing. The final trial came with the bill. He squinted at the small piece of paper. "This is wrong. I assure you, sir." The soup was taken off. Maya said, her patience wearing microscopically thin. Not that he grumbled, pointing a shaky finger. "The side of bread. It's listed here." "I never got it." Maya knew for a fact she had brought him the bread basket. She had placed it right next to his water glass. But she also knew arguing was pointless. It was $1.50. It wasn't worth the fight. "My apologies, sir. A mistake on my part." She took out her wallet from her apron pocket, pulled out 2 crumpled dollar bills, and placed them on the table. "Please allow me to cover it. It was my error." He stared at the $2, then up at her. His gaze was intense, searching, as if he were trying to peer directly into her soul. For the first time, he seemed to see her not as a uniform, but as a person. The silence stretched, becoming uncomfortable. Finally, he nodded slowly. He pushed the $2 back towards her, along with a $10 bill to cover his $7 coffee. He rose stiffly from the booth, and without another word, shuffled towards the exit. Maya went to clear the table, her body screaming with relief. She picked up the $10 bill and saw something underneath it. It wasn't a generous tip. It was a single, crumpled $5 bill and a napkin. The $5 barely covered the cost of the soup she had comped. In total, he'd left a $3 tip on an ordeal that had lasted over an hour. It was a final, petty insult. Chloe walked by, glancing at the meager tip. Wow, a whole $3. Hope it was worth it, Mother Teresa. Maya sighed, crumpling the napkin in her hand, ready to throw it away with the rest of the trash. But she stopped. There was writing on it, a messy, almost illegible scrawl in blue ink. The quality of a person is not in how they treat their equals, but their inferiors. She stared at the words. It was a strange, cryptic thing to leave behind. She dismissed it as the rambling of a strange, difficult old man. She smoothed out the napkin, tucked it into her apron pocket, and moved on to the next table. She had bills to pay, and a $3 tip wasn't going to help. She had no way of knowing that the ordeal wasn't over. In fact, it had just begun. The days following the encounter with the man in the tweed coat were a descent into a new level of desperation for Maya. The universe, it seemed, had decided to test the absolute limits of her resilience. The bistro cut her hours citing summer slowdowns. An email from the college's bursar's office arrived, its subject line, "Urgent, outstanding tuition balance," making her stomach clench. It was a final warning before they dropped her from her fall semester classes. The heaviest blow, however, came during a frantic, whispered phone call from her mother's nursing home. "Maya." "It's Nurse Evans," the kindly voice said, laced with a professional sorrow Maya had come to dread. "Your mother had a difficult night. Dr. Albright thinks it's time we discuss transitioning to a more intensive level of care. It involves a new specialist and medications that, well, they aren't fully covered by her current plan." Maya stood in the cramped hallway of her apartment, the phone pressed hard against her ear. She looked at a framed photo on the wall, her mother smiling and healthy, standing in a field of sunflowers. The photo felt like a relic from another lifetime. How much, Maya asked her voice, barely a whisper. The number the nurse gave her was so large, so astronomically out of reach, that Maya felt a dizzying wave of vertigo. It wasn't just a bill. It was a wall. A solid, insurmountable wall between her mother and the care she needed to breathe. That night, sleep offered no escape. She dreamt she was drowning in a sea of unpaid bills, each the piece of paper dragging her deeper into the dark. She woke up with a gasp, the weight of it all pressing down on her chest. Hope, once a flickering candle, was now just a wisp of smoke. She took out her portfolio, flipping through her sketches of Parisian street scenes she'd only ever seen in books. The dream felt like a mockery now. She slammed the portfolio shut, a sob catching in her throat. It was in this state of mind, 2 weeks after the incident with the old man, that the phone rang at the bistro. It was a slow Wednesday afternoon, and Maya was polishing silverware, her movements mechanical, her mind a million miles away. Mr. Henderson answered. "Corner table bistro Henderson speaking." He listened for a moment, his brow furrowed. "Reyes." "Yes, Maya Reyes works here. Who is calling?" He listened again, his expression shifting from professional courtesy to baffled curiosity. "I see. And the nature of the call?" A pause. "Right. One moment." He held the receiver out to Maya. "It's for you. Some woman with a very formal way of speaking. Says it's about a customer you served a couple of weeks ago. The man in the tweed coat." Maya's heart sank. A complaint. Of course. After all this time, the miserable old man had probably decided the second bowl of soup had also been unsatisfactory. This was it. She was going to be fired over a bowl of soup, losing the one meager lifeline she had left. Chloe, who had been arranging sugar caddies with painstaking slowness, overheard, and her eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Ooh, someone's in trouble. I told you he was bad news." With trembling hands, Maya took the phone. "This is Maya." "Good afternoon, Ms. Reyes," said a voice as crisp and cool as a winter morning. It was a woman's voice, devoid of any discernible accent, radiating an aura of impenetrable professionalism. "My name is Isabel Vance. I am calling on behalf of the office of Mr. Alexander Sterling." The name meant nothing to Maya. "Okay, Mr. Sterling was a guest at your establishment on Tuesday, June 10th. He was an elderly gentleman wearing a tweed coat. You were his server. Do you recall the interaction?" "Yes, I do," Maya said, bracing for the worst. "Excellent," Isabel continued, her tone unchanging. "Mr. Sterling has requested a meeting with you. He would like to discuss the service you provided. We would, of course, be happy to compensate you for your time. Would you be available to meet tomorrow at 10 a.m.? This threw Maya completely off balance. A meeting compensation. It didn't make any sense. A meeting? Why is something wrong? On the contrary, Ms. Reyes, Mr. Sterling was very impressed with your conduct. The meeting is to express his gratitude in a more formal capacity. Gratitude for what? For bringing him soup and not throwing it at him. Maya's mind reeled with confusion. This had to be a joke, a scam. Chloe, who had sidled closer, was now openly eavesdropping, her jaw practically on the floor. The word impressed had clearly snagged her attention. I don't understand," Maya stammered. "That is perfectly understandable," Isabel said smoothly. "All will be explained tomorrow. The meeting will be held at our offices. Sterling Enterprises, 111, Harbour Street, 90th floor. A car will be sent to your residence at 9:30 to bring you here. Sterling Enterprises." The name suddenly clicked. It wasn't some small, unknown company. Sterling Enterprises was a titan of industry, a global investment firm whose name was plastered on buildings and in financial reports. Alexander Sterling. He wasn't just a name. He was the Alexander Sterling, the reclusive mega-billionaire CEO, the man who was practically a myth in the business world, rarely seen, never photographed. Maya felt the floor drop out from under her. The old man, the shabby coat, the complaints, the misery, was Alexander Sterling. "Miss Reyes. Are you still there?" "Yes," she croaked. "Yes, I'm here. Will 10 a.m. work for you?" "Yes, that's fine. Wonderful. We look forward to seeing you." The line went dead. Maya stood frozen. The phone still pressed to her ear. Her mind a maelstrom of shock and disbelief. Chloe pounced. What was that Sterling Enterprises? What did he want? That old man? Was he somebody? Suddenly, Chloe's entire demeanor shifted. The scorn was gone, replaced by a frantic, calculating energy. "You know, I helped with him too. I remember I told you to be extra nice to him. I said he looked like one of those secret shoppers. We were a team on that one, remember?" The blatant lie was so audacious, it almost made Maya laugh. "Chloe, you told me he crawled out from under a bridge." No. I was just joking." Chloe insisted, her eyes wide with feigned sincerity. "You have to tell them I was part of it. We both deserve whatever it is he's offering. It's only fair." Maya simply stared at her, then at the phone. A car, a meeting on the 90th floor, a billionaire in disguise. It felt like the plot of a movie, not her life. She thought of the eviction notice, her mother's medical bills, her shattered Parisian dream. For the first time in weeks, a tiny, fragile flicker of something she hadn't felt in a long time ignited within her. It wasn't quite hope, but it was a powerful, terrifying curiosity. She had to know what this meant. She tucked the crumpled napkin which she'd kept in her wallet as a bizarre souvenir back into her pocket. The words on it suddenly seemed less like a ramble and more like a riddle she was just beginning to understand. The quality of a person is not in how they treat their equals, but their inferiors. She had treated a man she believed to be her inferior with dignity, and now she was about to find out what that act of simple, unrewarded decency was truly worth. The next morning, Maya stood on the curb outside her run-down apartment building, feeling as though she'd stepped into an alternate reality. At precisely 9:30 a.m., a sleek black sedan, a late-model Audi with tinted windows, glided to a silent stop in front of her. The driver, a man in a crisp black suit, got out and opened the rear door for her. "Ms. Reyes." "For Mr. Sterling." Maya, dressed in the nicest outfit she owned, a simple black dress and a worn but clean cardigan, slid into the plush leather interior. The car smelled of wealth, a subtle clean scent that was the polar opposite of the damp, dusty hallways of her building. As the car pulled away, she caught a glimpse of her reflection in the window, a wide-eyed, terrified girl on her way to see the king in his castle. The journey to 111. Harbour Street was short, but it took her a world away. The building was a spear of glass and steel that pierced the Boston skyline. It radiated power. Maya's heart hammered against her ribs as she walked into the lobby. The ceilings were cathedral high, the floors were gleaming white marble, and the air was filled with the quiet, efficient hum of money being made. A security guard at a massive marble desk directed her to a private elevator bank. 90th floor, he said, his voice respectful. The elevator ascended with dizzying speed, the numbers climbing rapidly. When the doors opened on the 90th floor, she was greeted not by an office, but by a serene art gallery-like space. The walls were adorned with what Maya instantly recognized as authentic modern art, a Rothko here, a de Kooning there. The furniture was minimalist and elegant, and standing by a floor-to-ceiling window that offered a breathtaking panorama of the city and the harbour was the woman from the phone. Ms. Reyes Isabel Vance said, extending a hand. She was as impeccably tailored in person as she had sounded on the phone, dressed in a sharp grey pantsuit. "Welcome. Thank you for coming." "Thank you for sending the car," Maya managed. "Mr. Sterling will be with you in a moment. Can I offer you some coffee? Water? Perhaps an espresso from our DeLonghi machine?" "Water is fine, thank you." As Isabel procured the water, Maya's artist eye took in the room. The space was curated, controlled, and intensely private. This was a place where the world was kept at a comfortable distance. The door to an inner office opened, and Maya's breath hitched. He was transformed. The hunched, shuffling old man was gone. In his place stood a man in his late 60s, tall and straight-backed, with a commanding presence that filled the room. His grey hair was neatly styled, and his eyes, which she now saw, were a piercing blue, were clear and sharp. He was dressed in a perfectly tailored dark blue suit that probably cost more than her entire year's tuition. But it was him. There was no mistaking the face, the lines of which now looked less like misery and more like the product of a long, complicated life. This was Alexander Sterling. "Miss Reyes," he said, his voice no longer a gravelly rasp, but a deep, resonant baritone. "Thank you for accepting my invitation." Maya simply nodded, unable to form words. The sheer whiplash of the situation was overwhelming. "Please sit," he said, gesturing to a pair of soft leather armchairs. They sat a low glass table between them. Isabel remained standing discreetly by the window. Alexander Sterling leaned forward, his hands clasped. "I imagine you are quite confused. That's one word for it." Maya finally found her voice. He offered a small, sad smile. "I owe you an apology and an explanation. My behavior at your restaurant was deplorable. It was a performance, but that doesn't excuse the distress it clearly caused you. For that, I am truly sorry." "A performance. A test, you might call it," he said, his gaze turning towards the window, towards the vast city below. "I have reached a point in my life, Ms. Reyes, where I am surrounded by echoes. People who agree with me, who flatter me, who want something from me. Their kindness is a currency they spend in the hope of a return. I've grown weary of it. I began to wonder if genuine, unprompted human decency still existed." He looked back at her, his blue eyes intense. "So I created a character, a man with nothing, no power, no influence, no wealth, a difficult, bitter, and unpleasant man. I wanted to see how the world would treat him. More often than not, it was with disdain, impatience, or manufactured pity. I was a problem to be ignored or disposed of as quickly as possible." Maya thought of Chloe's reaction and knew exactly what he meant. And then he continued, "I sat in your section. I complained. I was rude. I spilled soup. I accused you of short-changing me. I did everything in my power to be the worst customer of your day. And you, Ms. Reyes, you did not fail the test." He paused, letting the words hang in the air. "You never lost your composure. You were patient. But it was more than that. I saw it in your eyes. You weren't just being a professional waitress. When I was at my most difficult, you looked at me, and you didn't see a nuisance. You saw a sad old man. You responded not with anger, but with empathy. And then you paid for my bread." He chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. "That $1.50, Ms. Reyes. You took money from your own pocket money I'm sure you need to soothe the pride of a man you thought had nothing. You weren't serving a customer. You were caring for a person." Maya was speechless. She remembered the moment clearly, the feeling of exhaustion and the small act of surrender. It hadn't felt like a grand gesture. It had just felt easier than fighting. "The note I left you," he said. "The quality of a person is not in how they treat their equals, but their inferiors." It's a quote I've held on to. You, Miss Reyes, embody that principle. He leaned back. Which brings us to why you are here. My gratitude is not merely academic. I want to repay your kindness. Isabel has done some research. With your permission, I'd like to confirm what I've been told. You are an art student at Mass Art. Yes. And your passion is painting and art history. Yes. And your mother, Maria Reyes, is currently in assisted living, facing significant medical expenses. Tears pricked Maya's eyes. The mention of her mother, the stark reality of her struggles, laid bare in this opulent office, was too much. She nodded, unable to speak. Alexander Sterling's expression softened. Kindness like yours should not be struggling to survive. It should be nurtured. I would like to make you an offer. First, a gift. A small token of my appreciation. Isabel stepped forward and placed a sleek, dark blue folder on the table. You dream of Paris, I believe, Alexander said gently. Maya opened the folder. Inside were documents that made her vision swim. Flight confirmations. First class on Air France. A reservation for the Royal Monceau suite at the 5-star Hotel Le Bristol, Paris, for 2 weeks. A letter confirming a private after-hours tour of the Louvre, arranged via a personal donation to the museum. And a platinum credit card with a letter stating it was to be used for all meals transportation and artistic inspiration. The scale of it was staggering. It was more than a gift. It was a fantasy made real. The tears she'd been holding back now streamed freely down her cheeks. I can't accept this. She whispered the words, automatic, born of a lifetime of believing she deserved nothing this good. You can, and you will, Alexander said firmly, but not unkindly. But that is only the beginning. A vacation is fleeting. I am more interested in an investment. I am hereby establishing a trust. It will pay the entirety of your mother's medical care, whatever she needs for as long as she needs it. It will also cover your full tuition at Massart until you graduate. And it will provide you with a monthly stipend so that you no longer have to choose between your passion and your survival. Maya stared at him, her mind unable to process the magnitude of his words. Her mother's care, her tuition, a stipend. He was handing her back her life. He was giving her freedom. Why, she finally asked, her voice choked with emotion. Why would you do all this for me? Because you, Miss Reyes, he said. His voice, quiet but certain, gave me something I thought I had lost forever, a reason to believe in people again. You invested $1.50 in my dignity. I am merely offering a return on that investment. You have earned this. The only question is, will you accept? Maya looked from the plane tickets to Alexander Sterling's waiting face. It wasn't just about the money or the trip. It was about her art, her mother, her future. A future that just yesterday hadn't existed. Yes, she said the word, a mix of a sob and a laugh. Yes, I accept. A genuine warm smile finally broke through Alexander's stern facade. Excellent. But as Maya sat there basking in the surreal glow of her new reality, she had no idea that back at the corner table bistro, a different kind of plan was being hatched. Chloe, consumed by a furious, corrosive envy, was not about to let this opportunity slip by. And she was willing to do anything to claim a piece of it for herself. While Maya was having her life rewritten on the 90th floor, Chloe was stewing in a potent brew of jealousy and entitlement back at the bistro. She replayed the phone call in her head, her mind twisting the facts to fit a narrative where she was the unsung hero. Maya, in Chloe's eyes, had simply stumbled into good fortune that was rightfully, or at least partially, hers. Unbelievable, she muttered to one of the busboys, Marco. I was the one who spotted him. I even softened him up for her. Maya just swooped in at the end. It should be us getting that call. Marco just shrugged, not interested in Chloe's drama. But Chloe was determined. That evening after her shift, she went home and opened her laptop. If this Alexander Sterling was so important, he'd be online. It didn't take her long to find the Sterling Enterprises website. It was corporate and impenetrable, but it had a Contact Us page with a general inquiry email address. It was a long shot, but for a chance at a billionaire's gratitude, it was worth it. She began to type, carefully crafting a story full of lies and half-truths. To the office of Mr. Alexander Sterling. My name is Chloe Becker, and I am a senior waitress at the Corner Table Bistro, I am writing to you with a matter of some delicacy regarding your recent visit and your interaction with my colleague, Maya Reyes. I was so pleased to hear that you had a positive experience, as I was the one who initially encouraged Maya to give you special attention. I remember the day clearly, and remarked to her that you seemed like a distinguished gentleman who was perhaps down on his luck and deserving of our utmost compassion. While Maya can be a bit flighty, I made sure to oversee the situation and ensure your needs were met. I even helped her prepare the replacement soup you requested, reminding her to make it extra hot. I fear that in her excitement, Maya may have forgotten to mention my integral role in the service you received. We worked as a team to ensure your comfort. I only mention this because I believe in fairness and full professional integrity. I would hate for my own contributions to go unrecognized. Thank you for your time and for your patronage of our establishment. Sincerely, Chloe Becker. She read it over a smug smile on her face. It was perfect. It didn't directly accuse Maya of lying, but it cleverly painted her as a junior, slightly incompetent partner in a joint effort led by the more perceptive senior Chloe. She hit send, feeling a thrill of victory. The email landed in a general inbox monitored by a team of assistants, but the mention of Maya Reyes and the specific bistro visit flagged it for Isabel Vance's attention. She read it with a cool, analytical eye. In her line of work, she had encountered every form of sycophancy and opportunism imaginable. Chloe's email reeked of it. She forwarded it to Alexander Sterling with a single line. As expected, the woodwork is revealing its inhabitants. Alexander read the email, and a flicker of his old cynicism returned. Was it possible? Had he been so taken by Maya's quiet demeanor that he'd missed a more complex truth? Was her kindness genuine, or was she just the one who got to the finish line first in a race he hadn't known was being run? His faith, so recently restored, felt a pinprick of doubt. He hated this feeling. "Isabel," he said over the intercom, "I'm going out. I won't need a driver." An hour later, Henderson was in the middle of his end-of-night accounting when the front door of the bistro opened. He looked up, annoyed. "Sorry, we're closed." And then he froze. Standing there was not the disheveled old man from 2 weeks ago, but the immaculate, powerful figure whose face he'd only seen in the pages of Forbes magazine, Alexander Sterling. "Mr. Sterling," Henderson stammered, his mind racing. "What an honor. Please come in." "I won't take much of your time, Mr. Henderson," Alexander said, his tone polite but firm. "I just have a few questions about 2 of your employees, Maya Reyes and Chloe Becker." At that moment, Chloe emerged from the back, her purse in hand, ready to leave. She saw Alexander Sterling and her eyes went wide. This was her chance. "Mr. Sterling," she gushed, rushing forward with a dazzling fake smile. "I'm Chloe Becker. I'm the one who emailed you. I'm so glad you came. I was just telling Mr. Henderson how we all worked together to take care of you that day." Alexander turned his piercing blue eyes on her. He gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod. "Yes, Ms. Becker. You mentioned in your email that you were instrumental in my service, that you encouraged Ms. Reyes to be compassionate." "Absolutely," Chloe said, puffing up with self-importance. "Maya's young. She sometimes gets flustered. I felt it was my duty as a senior waitress to guide her." Mr. Henderson looked utterly baffled. He remembered that day clearly. He remembered Chloe making snide remarks, and Maya handling the difficult customer with a grace that had frankly surprised him. "And the soup," Alexander continued, his voice dangerously smooth. "You helped prepare the replacement bowl." "Yes, I told the kitchen, this has to be perfect." Chloe lied, her story growing more elaborate by the second. "I even checked the temperature myself before Maya took it out." Alexander remained impassive. "I see. You have a keen memory for detail. Tell me, Miss Becker, do you happen to recall the drawing on the napkin I left with the tip?" Chloe froze. A drawing. The old man had left a drawing. Her mind went blank. She searched for a plausible answer. What would a poor old man draw? A flower. A smiley face. A drawing. She stammered, her confidence wavering. I think it was a little flower. A thank you doodle. Yes, that's it. It was very sweet." Alexander's face remained a blank canvas. He turned his gaze to Mr. Henderson. "Mr. Henderson, you have security cameras in here, correct?" "Yes, sir," the manager replied, pointing to a small dome on the ceiling. "They cover the main dining floor." "And would the footage from Tuesday, June 10th be available?" "It should be on the DVR." "Yes," Henderson said, a knot of dread forming in his stomach. He was beginning to understand where this was going. "There will be no need," a quiet voice said from the doorway. All three turned. Maya stood there holding her apron. She had forgotten it and had come back to retrieve it. She had heard everything. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady, holding a mixture of hurt and steely resolve. Alexander looked at her, his expression unreadable. The moment of doubt, the test he hadn't intended, was now at its climax. "Ms. Reyes," he said, his voice neutral. "A conflicting report has emerged about my visit. Ms. Becker here claims a significant guiding role in the service I received. She mentions a flower drawn on my napkin. Can you corroborate that?" Maya looked at Chloe, at the venomous glare now being shot her way, and then back at the billionaire who had for a few hours been her savior. The hurt was sharp. That he would even entertain Chloe's lies was a blow. But she wouldn't let the lie stand. She reached into her wallet and pulled out the worn, crumpled napkin she had kept for 2 weeks. She smoothed it on the counter for everyone to see. There was no flower. There was a messy, amateurish sketch. It was a quick, charcoal-like drawing of a bird trapped inside a cage. Next to it were the scrawled words they already knew. Chloe stared at the napkin, the color draining from her face. It was a detail she could never have known, a small personal expression that she had dismissed as trash. She was caught. The silence in the bistro was thick and heavy. Mr. Henderson broke it. His face was a thunder cloud of fury. "Chloe," he said, his voice low and shaking with rage. "Get your things. You're fired. Now." Chloe opened her mouth to protest, but no words came out. She shot a look of pure hatred at Maya, snatched her purse, and stormed out of the bistro, slamming the door behind her. Alexander Sterling let out a long, slow breath. The last vestiges of his cynicism seemed to exhale with it. He turned to Maya, and the look in his eyes was one of profound apology and renewed respect. "Ms. Reyes, Maya," he said, the use of her first name a significant shift. "I should never have doubted you. My wealth has made me suspicious by nature, but that is my failing, not yours. Can you forgive me?" Maya looked at the napkin at the sad little bird in its cage. She finally understood. It wasn't just a random doodle. It was a self-portrait. He had felt like that bird, trapped. "There's nothing to forgive," she said softly. "You were just making sure your investment was sound." A real warm smile touched Alexander's lips. The investment, he said, has never looked more sound. Now I believe you have a plane to catch. Paris is waiting. The journey to Paris was less a flight and more a gentle, surreal dissociation from her old reality. Maya had never been on a plane, and her first experience was not in a cramped economy seat, but in the hushed, serene cocoon of first class on Air France. She was led to a private pod, a self-contained world of cream leather and polished chrome. The flight attendant, a woman with a warm, genuine smile, addressed her as Mademoiselle Reyes and showed her how the seat transformed into a fully flat bed with the touch of a button. She ran her hand over the crisp duvet, the material smoother than anything she'd ever owned. She thought of the lumpy mattress in her Boston apartment, the one with the permanent dip in the middle. The sheer absurdity of it all, the whiplash from her life of constant struggle to this pinnacle of luxury, brought a bubble of laughter to her lips. It was a sound of pure, unadulterated disbelief. "May I bring you some champagne, mademoiselle?" the attendant asked. "Yes, please." Maya said the words, feeling foreign and luxurious on her tongue. When the glass arrived, fizzing with tiny golden bubbles, she held it up to the light of her window. Below, the patchwork of the American coast was shrinking, giving way to the vast, dark expanse of the Atlantic. She was literally crossing into a new world. She took a sip. It tasted like stars. The menu was a small leather-bound booklet listing dishes she couldn't have pronounced a week ago. She chose a sea bass with a fennel confit, and it arrived on actual porcelain with weighted silver cutlery. She ate slowly, savoring every bite, a stark contrast to the way she used to wolf down cold staff meals in the bistro's chaotic 5-minute breaks. Later, as the cabin lights dimmed, she lay down under the duvet. Sleep, however, was elusive. Her mind was a slideshow of contrasts, the grimy floor of the bistro kitchen versus the plush carpet under her feet. The angry, demanding face of the man in the tweed coat versus the calm, paternal voice of Alexander Sterling on the phone. The eviction notice on her door versus the 5-star hotel reservation tucked safely in her bag. She wasn't just flying to Paris. She was flying away from the ghost of a life that had almost crushed her. When sleep finally came, it was deep and dreamless, the gentle hum of the engines, a lullaby, carrying her towards her future. She awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through her window. Below the land was a tapestry of green fields and terracotta roofs. France. The feeling was electric. Upon landing at Charles de Gaulle, the seamless dream continued. There was no confusing bus to navigate, no heavy suitcase to drag. A quiet professional driver was waiting for her, just past customs, holding a simple sign, Reyes. He led her to a black Mercedes, and they slipped into the morning traffic, heading towards the heart of Paris. Maya pressed her face to the window, drinking it all in. The light was different here, softer and more golden than the harsh, direct sun of Boston. It bathed the elegant, cream-colored buildings in a painterly glow. Every detail was a potential sketch. The intricate wrought-iron balconies, the uniform blue of the street signs, the confident way Parisians wore their scarves. The car pulled up to Le Bristol, Paris, a hotel so majestic it looked less like a temporary lodging and more like a permanent fixture of French aristocracy. A doorman in a tailored coat tipped his hat to her. The lobby was a symphony of marble, fresh flowers, and quiet opulence. She felt a familiar pang of imposter syndrome, the voice in her head whispering, "You don't belong here." But the woman at the front desk greeted her with such warmth, as if she were a long-lost friend, that the feeling quickly dissolved. Her suite was an astonishment. It was larger than her entire Boston apartment, decorated in shades of pale rose and gold, with antique furniture and actual oil paintings on the silk-paneled walls. A set of French doors opened onto a private balcony overlooking a pristine, manicured garden, where a white cat, a hotel resident she would later learn, was sunning itself. On a marble-topped table sat a vase bursting with fragrant pink peonies, and beside it a heavy cream envelope. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it. The note was written in a strong, decisive hand. Maya, enjoy the light. It's been waiting for you. A.S. Tears welled in her eyes. It was the perfect message. He understood. This wasn't just a vacation. It was a pilgrimage. This was her chance to finally step into the light. For 2 weeks, Maya lived the life she had only ever dared to sketch in her notebooks. She woke not to the shriek of an alarm clock, but to the gentle clinking of life from the street below. Her first morning, she bought a still-warm pain au chocolat from a corner boulangerie and ate it on a park bench in the Jardin du Luxembourg, feeling the flaky pastry melt on her tongue. It was the most delicious thing she had ever tasted. She walked until her feet ached in a good way, a sketchbook and a small set of charcoal pencils becoming an extension of her hand. She filled pages with the city's lifeblood, the intense concentration of the chess players in the park, the elegant arch of a woman's back as she hailed a taxi, the chaotic beauty of the flower market on Ile de la Cité. She was no longer just an art student. She was an artist at work. Her days were spent in holy places. She made her way to the Musée d'Orsay, the repurposed train station that housed the world's greatest collection of Impressionist art. Walking into the main hall with its grand clock and soaring glass ceiling felt like coming home. She stood for a full hour in front of Degas's The Ballet Class, mesmerized by the way he had captured the unglamorous, exhausting reality behind the stage's perfection. She saw herself in those tired young dancers, their aching feet, their strained muscles, their unwavering dedication to their craft. Then she found Monet's rooms, and her breath caught in her throat. Seeing the real brushstrokes, the thick daubs of paint that from a distance resolved into a shimmering, light-filled scene, was a revelation. It was a language she understood viscerally. She found a bench and simply sat, letting the art wash over her, feeling the passion and vision of the masters seep into her very bones. This was what her soul had been starving for. The apex of her journey came on a Tuesday evening, the private tour of the Louvre. After the final tourist had been ushered out and the great museum's massive doors were bolted shut. A kind elderly curator named Sylvie met her at a side entrance. The museum was transformed in the silence. Their footsteps echoed on the marble floors, and the ancient statues cast long, dramatic shadows in the dim light. It felt sacred secret. Sylvie led her through the empty galleries, sharing stories that weren't on the placards. Finally, they arrived at the Salle des Etats, and there she was. The Mona Lisa, alone. No crowds, no ropes, no sea of phones, just Maya Sylvie and the most famous painting in the world. She could get close enough to see the delicate network of cracks, the craquelure that webbed across the ancient poplar wood. She saw the impossible softness of the transitions between light and shadow, the genius of Leonardo's sfumato. She thought of the man in the tweed coat scowling over a bowl of soup. She thought of Chloe's venomous glare. She thought of her own reflection in the bistro's grimy window, her face etched with exhaustion. And now she was here. All of that had led to this. The journey was so immense, so impossible, that the tears came hot and silent. They were not tears of sadness or even joy, but of a profound, soul-shaking catharsis. On her last evening, she sat at an outdoor café in Montmartre, the last of the evening sun, painting the sky in hues of orange and lavender. The white dome of the Sacré-Cœur glowed on the hill above her, and the city of Paris sprawled out below a sea of twinkling lights. She was sketching the scene, capturing the feeling of peaceful melancholy, when her phone rang. It was Alexander Sterling. "I trust Paris was agreeable," he said, his voice warm. "It's been everything." Maya replied, her voice filled with an emotion she couldn't quite name. "I don't have the words to thank you, Alexander." "There is no need," he said. "True talent finding its purpose is thanks enough. I spoke with the head nurse at your mother's facility today. She's started a new physical therapy program and is already showing remarkable improvement. She sent me a picture of the watercolor set you had delivered to her. It seems the artistic gene runs in the family." Maya's heart swelled so tight it almost hurt. He wasn't just an anonymous benefactor. He was a guardian, a quiet architect of her family's well-being. "Alexander," she began. "This trip, the money, it's all a tool. It's meant to clear the path for you. The real work, the art that comes from you. Don't ever let this good fortune make you complacent. Stay hungry. Stay observant. Stay kind. That is the woman who earned this." "I promise," she whispered, her gaze falling on her sketchbook. "Good," he said, and she could hear the smile in his voice. "Because the path is about to get more interesting. When you return to Boston, Isabel has scheduled a meeting for you with the Dean of Mass Art. It seems your portfolio, which I took the liberty of forwarding, has made quite an impression. They want to discuss offering you a fully funded spot in their competitive Master of Fine Arts program, the one that includes a year of study in Florence." The world tilted on its axis for a second time. Florence, the home of the Renaissance, the city of Michelangelo and Botticelli. It was a dream she hadn't even been audacious enough to form. "You gave me back my faith in people, Maya," Alexander said, his voice soft but firm. "The least I can do is give you back your future in its entirety. Now go. Enjoy your last Parisian sunset. The world is waiting for your art." The call ended. Maya sat motionless, the phone in her hand. Below her, the city of light shimmered. She picked up her charcoal pencil. On the corner of her drawing of the Parisian skyline, she sketched a small bird. Not in a cage, but in mid-flight, its wings spread wide against the vast open sky. She was no longer the waitress drowning in debt. She wasn't just a tourist. She was an artist, and she was at long last free. And so Maya's story is more than just a tale of unexpected fortune. It's a powerful reminder of the unseen ripples our actions create. She didn't help a billionaire. She helped a human being who was in pain. Her reward wasn't just a first-class ticket, but a first-class ticket to the life she was always meant to live. It proves that character isn't defined in the grand gestures, but in the small, quiet moments of choice to be kind, when it's easier to be cruel, to offer dignity when none is expected in return. Her journey reminds us that you never know who you are touching or how that single act of grace might change the world, starting with your own. What did you think of Maya's incredible story? Would you have done the same in her position? Let us know in the comments below. If this story inspired you, please give this video a like, share it with someone who needs a lift, and don't forget to Subscribe to our channel for more unforgettable stories of hope and humanity. Thank you for watching.